Everybody be cool. Don't move.
Jesus Christ.
Stare right back at you.
Hello, and welcome to a new episode of RT Essentials. I am Naz Perez, and we have discussed horror flicks on this show, and we've talked all kinds of films about and starring animals. But today, we combine them. That is right, it is time to break down animal horror movies. Now, these are the films that best plotted humans against actual animals that exist, not fictional monsters or beasts. And they'll be coming at us from air, land, and sea. So get ready to rethink ever stepping foot in a pet store or a forest or a body of water or a barn or Alaska ever again. Because this is the best animal horror movies, The Birds. Helping this list take flight is 1963's The Birds. Now, this film was produced and directed by Alfred Hitchcock and loosely based on a short story of the same name by Daphne du Maurier, first published in 1952. Now, the movie stars Rod Taylor and Tippi Hedren in her big screen debut and tells the story of a wealthy socialite in San Francisco who follows a potential boyfriend to the small town of Bodega Bay. Now, there, a series of unexplained and violent attacks from birds of all kinds suddenly begin to take place. The Birds was partially inspired by a real bird attack that happened in Capitola, California in 1961, when hordes of seabirds were dive-bombing homes and cars due to what they later learned was a reaction to toxic algae. I mean, how freaky would that be? When it came to filming, roughly $200,000 was spent on mechanical birds, although most of the birds you see were actually real. Now, like the gulls that were picked up from a San Francisco garbage dump and the sparrows that were both borrowed from the wild and also purchased at various pet shops. The film also had plenty of special effects, which were spread all over Hollywood to get done. This included people working at Walt Disney Studios, MGM, Fox, and Universal International, with the final product containing 370 effect shots. But it didn't stop there. Hitchcock also enlisted the use of an advanced electronic synthesizer to create some of the birds' sounds. Now, the machine they used was developed from a popular synthesizer used on German radio in the 1920s, which is just such a Hitchcock move. And all that hard work didn't go unnoticed, as The Birds was nominated for a Best Visual Effects Oscar. Now, since then, the certified fresh film has become iconic in the horror genre, on its way to being added to the National Film Registry in 2016. And that's because, as the critics' consensus says, Alfred Hitchcock successfully turned birds into some of the most terrifying villains in horror history. And I can attest to that fact. Arachnaphobia.
Rock and roll.
All right, party time. Come on, take that. Come on.
Next on this list, and creeping plenty of people out in the process, is 1990's Arachnaphobia. Now, this was a directorial debut for Frank Marshall, who wanted the film to feel reminiscent of the aforementioned The Birds by mixing in a little laughter to go along with all the scares. Haha. Now, the movie centers around a poisonous spider that hitches a ride from Venezuela and ends up in a rural California town. Why do these always happen in California? It's like they're out for me. Where it does its thing and people start turning up dead. So an arachnophobe doctor, played by Jeff Daniels, teams up with a colorful exterminator, played by John Goodman, to try and stop a deadly infestation. Now, Arachnaphobia used a mix of animatronic and real spiders, with over 300 of Avondale spiders hailing from New Zealand coming over for filming. Apparently, their large size paired with a harmlessness to humans and an unusually social temperament makes them the perfect movie stars. Now, one of the people making the magic for the animatronic spiders was Jamie Hyneman, who would go on to star and co-produce a popular show, Mythbusters. He was partly responsible for the general spiders seen in the film, among others.
Nice shot. Thank God. Don't mention it.
Now, of course, the safety of the spiders was a top priority on set. When something like a shoe was used to crush a spider, a hole cushioned with foam rubber was carved into the prop. Any dead spiders used in the film were those that had already died of natural causes, and the sounds of them being crushed, achieved by things like stepping on mustard packets or a bag of chips, were added in later. Now, there was some confusion among advertisers about whether Arachnaphobia was a thriller or a comedy, with some commercials cleverly calling it a thrillamedy, which I love that word. It was released to mostly positive reviews and eventually became a, if not the, quintessential spider horror movie. Jaws.
I can go slow ahead. Come on down and chum some of this.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Taking a bit out of the next spot on this list is 1975's Jaws. Now, this film was directed by Steven Spielberg and based on Peter Benchley's 1974 novel of the same name. Roy Scheider stars as the police chief of a small beach town that has a killer shark problem. And to avoid a loss of tourism revenue by closing down the waters, the sheriff teams up with a marine biologist and an old seafarer to hunt the shark down. At first, the filmmakers were hoping to train a great white shark to use in the movie, but realized quickly that that wouldn't be an option. And while some footage of real sharks was captured for the film, 3 full-size prop sharks were made instead. One was a full body with its belly missing that was pulled through the water, and the other 2 were on platforms with half of their heads missing on one side for certain shots. Now, Spielberg and his crew reportedly named the robotic sharks Bruce, after his lawyer, and they cost roughly $250,000 apiece to fabricate. I wonder if the lawyer cost that much. Now, that was done with a team of up to 40 technicians supervised by Bob Mady, best known for creating the giant squid in 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. But the big problem with the robotic sharks, which could take up to 14 people to operate, is that they didn't work all that great, all that often. Their jaws wouldn't close, fins wouldn't flap, and one actually sank to the bottom. This forced Spielberg to change the way that he shot some of the movie, merely hinting at the shark in many scenes instead of showing it, which he and others have said probably actually made Jaws better. Anaconda. Slithering its way to the next spot on this list is 1997's Anaconda. The film was directed by Luis Llosa, best known for movies like Sniper and The Specialist. Anaconda stars Jennifer Lopez as a filmmaker traveling deep in the Amazon jungle in search of a forgotten tribe. Now, her and her crew, which includes Eric Stoltz and Ice Cube, are eventually lured into the company of a mysterious man, played by Jon Voight, who uses them to find and catch a legendary anaconda that's worth a fortune. Now, to create the giant water snake, filmmakers used a mix of animatronic snakes and CGI. But because the technology was so expensive at the time, every second of CGI screen time cost about $100,000. So, the 2 primary snakes featured in Anaconda were built with animatronics. The queen snake was a 40-foot, 5,000-pound model, while the second warrior snake checked in at 25 feet long and 1,500 pounds. At one point during filming, one of the anacondas shorted out and totally lost control. Although they did get some usable footage that can be seen in the film, so we'll call that a win. And if you ever wondered what happened to that 40-foot animatronic snake, it actually found its way to the California Academy of Sciences in San Francisco. The skin and tail were removed to show off its endoskeleton and animatronic wiring, all in the name of science. What's even cooler is that one of the film's 6 Razzie nominations went to the animatronic Anaconda for, quote, worst new star. But wait, it gets better, because the snake lost the award to the worm, as in Dennis Rodman, for his performance in Double Team. Deep Blue Sea.
We're going to pull together and we're going to find a way to get out of here. First, we're going to seal off this.
Next up on our list of the best animal horror movies is 1999's Deep Blue Sea. Now, this film was directed by Rennie Harlin of Cliffhanger and Die Hard 2 fame, and the cast includes names like Samuel L. Jackson, Michael Rappaport, Thomas Jane, and LL Cool J. It takes place in an isolated underwater facility on an island where the brain tissue of DNA-altered sharks is being tested as a possible cure for Alzheimer's. But when a routine procedure goes haywire, those who are down there become outnumbered by the sharks, and they have to find a way to stop them from escaping to the ocean and breeding. With a budget somewhere between $65 and $80 million, filming mostly took place at Fox Baja Studios in Mexico, where sets were built above the large water tanks that had been built for the Titanic. And even though Deep Blue Sea did feature some shots of real sharks, those Titanic tanks were used for a mix of animatronic sharks and, of course, the space for CGI ones to be added in later. Now, as far as the animatronic shark goes, director Harlin looked to Jaws and saw that its main animatronic shark was 25 feet long. So he decided this one should be 26 feet. And it seemed to make an impression on Sam Jackson, who later said he, quote, was in awe of the size of it and called it a, quote, real monster. And for the real shark footage that they did use, Harlin brought the team to the Bahamas to film with them. That included star Thomas Jane, who plays a shark wrangler in the film and who described the experience as so terrifying that I don't want to remember it. Now, while it is rotten on the tomato meter, 2 direct-to-streaming sequels have followed, and Deep Blue Sea has since been regarded by many critics as one of the better shark films ever besides Jaws, albeit in a limited genre. Lake Placid. You do not want to be 9 years old living in Florida and watching Lake Placid, because that is what happened to me. Doing a cannonball into the next spot on this list is 1999's Lake Placid. The film was written by David E. Kelly, best known for like a million TV shows, and it was directed by Steve Miner from the Friday the 13th franchise. Now, Bill Pullman stars in this one as a local game warden who teams up with the sheriff, played by Brendan Gleeson, and Bridget Fonda's paleontologist character to try and stop a massive and vicious crocodile that is wreaking havoc around a small lake in Maine. The Croc was created by Stan Winston Studios, of course, Stan being the legend behind the monsters in films like Aliens and Jurassic Park, no big deal. This reptile measured up at 32 feet long, about 12 feet bigger than the largest known crocodile in captivity at the time.
Come and get it!
There was also plenty of CGI that went into making the animal even more menacing, including some water work for when it dives in and out of the water. And they even CG'd a helicopter that the croc attacked when it got too close to the water. The beastly puppet was tested before filming in Castaic Lake in the LA National Forest, where the creators learned that it had enough head and tail function to actually swim on its own, although tow cables were used during filming to make it go faster. Hydraulics powered the crocodile, which were protected in waterproof housings and surrounded by a water-resistant skin with many layers of paint to achieve the desired croc effect. And after all that work, both CGI and animatronic, our friend Mr. Croc only got 3 minutes and 43 seconds of screen time. Robbery. The Shallows. diving into the next spot on this list is 2016's The Shallows. Now, this film was directed by Jamais Coyette Sarah, known for the horror film House of Wax and a handful of Liam Neeson action thrillers. It follows a medical student played by Blake Lively who travels to a secluded beach for a much-needed getaway following the death of her mother. But after a great white shark attacks, she becomes stranded on a giant rock 200 yards from the shore, and she must fight for her life against the deadly predator. Only about 10% of the filming was done on location to help build the setting, but most of it took place in a tank using blue screens for effects. And despite Colette Sarah being a fan of using practical effects for past movies, the shark in The Shallows was created entirely through CGI, which was reportedly only completed a few days before the marketing campaign began. Now, as far as creating the shark goes, the animators were told to think of the shark as a big diesel truck with a lot of power and torque, as opposed to a fast sports car. The crew watched countless hours of Shark Week shows to help sort out the details, and according to Colette Sarah, those details included it being a female shark with a story behind every scar on her skin. For the other animal featured in the film, a seagull named Steven Seagull, they considered using CGI or a puppet. But after Blake Lively was able to feed a group of seagulls during a scouting trip, they realized it would be possible to use the real thing. The certified fresh film was a huge hit at the box office with a critics' consensus that says The Shallows transcends tired shark attack tropes with nasty thrills and a powerful performance from Blake Lively. The Gray. Making a colorful entrance next on this list is 2012's The Gray. Now, the film was co-written, produced, and directed by Joe Carnahan, and based on the short story Ghost Walker by Ian Mackenzie Jeffers, who also co-wrote the screenplay with Carnahan. It follows a group of Alaskan oil refinery workers led by a sharpshooter played by Liam Neeson, whose plane crashes in the frozen wilderness. And as the survivors trek towards safety while battling the icy elements and their own crash injuries, they're met with packs of hungry Canadian gray wolves. Director Carnahan studied hours of nature specials about wolves to create his pack for the film. Given that the wolves depicted in The Gray show highly abnormal behavior, according to experts, the director leaned on more extraordinary stories, like a 400-member horse hunting pack and 250-pound wolves fighting grizzly bears. Now, to get the right look for the animals, a combination of trained live animals, large puppet heads operated by 3 to 4 people, and acrobats in wolf suits were used. In the end, all of these elements were seamlessly woven together using CGI. The film's trailer showed bits of Liam Neeson fighting a wolf by hand, which was originally meant to be part of the film's ending, before Carnahan later changed his mind. Despite some criticism over the portrayal of wolves in the movie, to which Carnahan replied by saying that the film is meant to reflect humanity's internal spiritual journeys, The Gray went on to find box office success and was nominated for a Saturn Award for Best Horror or Thriller Film. Cujo.
Vic? Come on, Cujo. Come on, boy. Come on, Cujo. Go on, that dog. You don't know that dog. Don't worry about it, ma'am. Cujo won't hurt him. He likes kids.
Panting and drooling its way to the next spot on our list is 1983's Cujo. This film is based on Stephen King's 1981 novel of the same name and directed by Louis Teague, who did a couple other animal-themed horror flicks in the early 80s with Alligator and Cat's Eye. Now, this one tells the story of a sweet St. Bernard named Cujo who is bitten by a bat and transforms into a dangerous, aggressive beast. Eventually, a mother and her son get caught stuck in Cujo's crosshairs, and they get stranded in their tiny car with the crazed animal trying to get in. Now, there have been varying reports on just how many dogs, real or otherwise, it took to bring Cujo to the screen, but it seems to be somewhere around 10, including a handful of St. Bernards, several mechanical dogs, and a black lab / Great Dane mix wearing a St. Bernard costume. Can we please get a picture of that? That sounds amazing.
Cujo, what's the matter? Cujo, it's me, Brett. Take it easy, boy. I'm not gonna hurt you.
When real dogs were used, they would usually have to have their tails tied down to their legs because they would be enjoying things too much and wagging their tails accordingly. And when it came time for Cujo to attack the car in the film, trainers would actually put the dog's favorite toys inside the car so that they would try to get them. Such cute innocence used to create such horror. Now, the animal trainer used for this film, Carl Miller, would go on to work on the film Beethoven, which also features a St. Bernard. Now, although Miller said he wasn't exactly very popular among St. Bernard owners after this movie, as he would try to explain that it's not a story about a rabid St. Bernard, but rather a story about a rabid dog that happened to be a St. Bernard semantics buddy. The fresh film received mixed reviews from critics, and it did okay at the box office, but has since garnered a bit of a cult following through the years. And let's just say St. Bernard owners have calmed down. Crawl. And arriving on its hands and knees for the final spot on this list is 2019's Crawl. Now, this film was produced by Sam Raimi and directed by Alexandra Aja from The Hills Have Eyes and Piranha 3D fame. The story revolves around a daughter and father, played by Kaya Scodelario, and Barry Pepper, who get trapped in the crawl space of their home along with their dog during a Category 5 hurricane. And soon they have even bigger problems, as a relentless pack of huge alligators begins to attack them. Filming took place in a warehouse in Serbia, and it lasted 41 days using a mix of both practical alligators and CGI ones, with the latter being the preferred method. Director Aja said that using animatronics mostly locks you into certain framing, and with CGI, they could better capture the ferocity of the beasts. To help simulate the CGI gators, they would use stuntmen wearing green spandex, divers recreating movements in the water, fake alligator heads on sticks, and the director holding a pole with a pillow hanging from it wrapped in green fabric. I mean, again, another image I would love to see. Now, the alligators were then digitally rendered and added to the final product, which took 3 months to complete with 244 total effect shots used in the film. In order to create the chaos presented so beautifully in Crawl, Aja extensively researched both hurricanes and alligators, combing through hundreds of hours of real-world footage to find both in their most powerful forms. And friends, that is our list of the best animal horror movies. I mean, there's gotta be a few that you were hoping to see on this list, so by all means, let us know where and how we went wrong. And if we learned anything from this list today, it's that the late 90s was prime for animal horror movies. I mean, please take me back. Thanks for tuning in to RT Essentials. I'm Naz Perez, and I'll see you next time.